Hey there, and welcome. If you've spent any time with Python, you know that lists are absolutely everywhere. But, you know, getting the data out of those lists in a smart, efficient way, that's a skill that'll really level up your coding game. So today, we're going to take a guided tour and master the best ways to loop through Python lists. Okay, so you've got your data, and it's all nicely packed into a list. Great start. But the real fun begins when you ask yourself, all right, how do I actually get to each item inside this thing? That's the exact puzzle we're going to solve together today. So here's our roadmap. We'll start with the basics of what looping even is. Then we'll dive into the absolute workhorse of Python, the for loop. After that, we'll see what to do when you need a bit more control, using index-based and while loops. We'll wrap things up with a really cool shortcut called list comprehension, and, probably the most important part, how to choose the best method for any situation. First up, what even is list looping? Well, when you get right down to it, it's one of the most basic, fundamental things you'll ever do when you're working with a collection of data. It's really just this. It's the process of going through every single item in your list, one after the other, so you can do something with it. You might be printing it, you might be changing it, maybe you're just checking its value. Whatever you're doing, you're looping. So let's check out the best ways to do it. All right, our journey begins with the most important technique of all, the standard for loop. Seriously, if you're ever not sure where to start, this is your answer. It's the most Pythonic way to do things, which is just a fancy way of saying it's the most natural, readable, and recommended way in the Python world. So why is this for loop so incredibly popular? Well, it's because it is just so simple and clean. You don't have to worry about creating counters or managing indexes. You get to work directly with the items themselves. This makes your code super readable, really efficient, and it just works. Python handles all the boring stuff for you. And just look at how simple the code is. That line, for X in this list, it practically reads like a sentence in English. For each item, let's call it X that's in our list, and Python just gets it. In the first round, X becomes apple and gets printed. Next up, X is banana, and then it's cherry. It just goes until every single item has had its turn. It's so elegant. But what if you need to know more than just the item? What if you also need to know its position, its index in the list? For that, we need a slightly different approach. This brings us to looping with an index, the perfect tool for when you need to know where you are. So this method is kind of like a three-step dance. First, instead of looping over the items, we generate a list of their index numbers using range lengthislist. Then we loop through those numbers. And finally, inside the loop, we use that number to grab the item from that exact position in our list. Let's break this down. In our list, len of this list is 3. So range of 3 gives us the numbers 0, 1, and 2. Our loop variable, I, will take on each of those values. On the first pass, I is 0, so we print this list 0, which is apple. Then I becomes 1, we print this list 1, banana, and so on. It's a little more involved, but it's perfect for when you need that index number. Okay, now let's look at a method that gives you complete manual control over everything, the while loop. Now this isn't as common for just simple list looping, but it's a really powerful tool to have in your back pocket when you need that precise control. Here is the absolute key difference. It's all about responsibility. A for loop is like putting your car on cruise control. Python handles everything for you. But a while loop, you're the one driving. You have to create your own counter, you have to tell the loop exactly when to stop, and this is the big one. You have to remember to update that counter yourself. You can see right here the 3 parts you're responsible for. First, you have to initialize a counter. In this case, I equals 0. Next, you set the condition for the loop to keep running, while I less than len this list. And finally, at the end of each loop, you absolutely must remember to increment your counter. I equals I plus 1. And this brings us to a super important warning. If you forget that last part, if you forget I equals I plus 1, then your condition I less than len of this list will always be true. The loop will just run forever, printing apple again and again and again, and your program will get stuck. This is called an infinite loop, and it is the #1 trap people fall into when using a while loop. All right, we've seen the standard way, the indexed way, and the totally manual way. Now let's talk about something a little different. A technique that a lot of Python developers absolutely adore for its power and its elegance.
let's get into the magic of list comprehensions.
So, what's all the hype about? Well, it all comes down to being powerful and concise. List comprehensions let you write what would normally be a multi-line loop in a single, clean line. And they're amazing for both changing and filtering your data all at once.
And there it is. That's it. That entire for loop we saw at the beginning, it's now condensed into this one single line wrapped in square brackets. It's actually really natural to read. You just kind of read it backwards. Print x for each x that's in my list. It's incredibly short and to the point.
But here's the real secret sauce. While our example just prints the items, the real power of a list comprehension isn't just about looping. It's about creating brand new lists. Just imagine taking a list of numbers and, in one line, creating a totally new list that only has the even numbers, or a new list where every number is squared. That's where this technique is an absolute game changer.
Okay, deep breath. We've covered 4 totally different techniques, so the big question is, how do you decide which one you're actually supposed to use? Well, it all comes down to a simple idea: picking the right tool for the job. And this little table makes it super clear. 90% of the time, for simple iteration, just use the standard for loop. You can't beat its readability. If you happen to need the item's position, then you switch over to the index-based loop. If you need that really fine-grained manual control, the while loop is your friend. Just be careful. And finally, if your main goal is to create a new, modified list, list comprehension is hands down the most elegant and Pythonic way to go. So, as we wrap this all up, I want you to remember these key ideas. First, always try to match the tool to the task you're trying to solve. Second, if you're ever in doubt, just choose the option that's easiest to read. Trust me, your future self will thank you for writing clear code. And finally, the absolute best way to get good at this is to just open up a code editor and practice. Experiment, see what works, and build that skill. So we've explored the main roads and a few of the scenic shortcuts for navigating Python lists. The tour is over, and now you have the map. The only question left is, which path are you going to take on your next coding adventure? Thanks so much for joining me.